Thank you so much. All right, well, I'm excited to introduce this project and the team members that you see listed here. So the PhD student candidate who is working on this is Zane, as well as the undergrad student Cameron, who is currently in Bali, actually. All right, so all of this work really stemmed from an initial project called Rethinking Wildfires, Floods, and Health. And so if you imagine looking at the toxic release inventory map produced by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which as of yesterday was still available, which is great to report, we can see these areas with the larger purple circle means the largest amount of toxic release. And so the area where you see the large purple circle is this area in Globe, Miami. This area has been a place of resource extraction, primarily copper mining, for decades. And if we look at a quote from a local community member from a couple years ago, we can see that they're acknowledging this pollution from the past. Right below the mine was our school, Washington. That was when the smelter didn't have any controls. There would be sulfur smoke coming out of the top of the stack. When it rained, you'd get acid rain. We'd be choking because of the fumes were so bad, but it was just part of life. We lived there and accepted it. I'm highlighting that because in this thinking about this project that I'm going to talk about, it really started with a community concern in September 2021. And I'm highlighting a timeline, but I won't be going into all these aspects. And so what happened in this space is you had a combination of compound climate extremes and geohazards. Again, you have this area of resource extraction and toxic releases for decades, combined with the Telegraph fire burning around almost 190,000 acres, and 37% of the soil burn severity was moderate to high, combined with 52 flash floods that happened after this event. And so what occurred is that you have the burning of soil and plant material in an area with heavy resource extraction, activities releasing metals into the environment that can then get atmospherically deposited and absorbed by the plants and soil. You have that burn, and then you have a flash flood that moves all of this material into residential areas. And so to do this work based on that community concern, we do a co-created community science approach. This is where you're inviting diverse co-creators and recognizing that there's strength in the intersectionality that each of these members and community members bring to the team. And so in this space, you can imagine that these community members are living near resource extraction or considered fence line. They're rural, historically underrepresented, limited income, and might not have a college degree. So part of this project was setting up and building out a community advisory board. The other part was doing empowerment education through community science and hiring promotoras or community health workers and training residents on how to collect environmental samples. We can see, in addition, a large component of this was building what was named the Cobre Valley. Cobre stands for copper, or not stands for, is copper in Spanish, Valley Community Environmental Advisory Board, and these community members have been serving and paid since February 2023. They've been informing the project over time in terms of direction, how to report data back to community members, participants, and the community at large, and informing new research questions. I'm giving you all this background because we spent a lot of time ensuring this was a co-created project, and we reported all the data back. And what really came out of this was new questions from the board and community members, and very much around if you have this, so in the study that I just presented on rethinking wildfires, floods, and health, we looked at the sediment and material that settled in and around the homes, and we looked at things by profile and depth in the areas that flooded. But the question was also, what about all this material that's aerosolized? So if you had all this material run in you had the burn scar, you had the flash flood, you have this material that washed in, now it's settled in soils, and now it's being aerosolized and it's in dust. And so with this, we had a research question around, is the dust generated from wildfire-impacted ecosystems next to mining increasing metalloid exposures in these environmental justice communities? So this is where the One Health comes in. And so what I'll talk about today is part A. And what we see here is that we are looking at determining the chemical composition of generated dust at health-relevant aerodynamic diameters. So the step one that we did in this space is we mapped the wildfire by burn severity and then collected plant and soil samples by biotic community. So what you see here is the burn severity, and then the dots that you see are where we've collected samples by biotic community to collect plant and soil materials from the area that burned. Next, we then brought those to the lab, we dried them out, and then we burnt the plants at different temperatures that align with wildfire bird severity categories, low, medium, and high. After that burning, we had a lot of fun. I'm not sure if Zane's here, but this is our awesome dust generator. We generated dust at 10 microns or less, and then we analyzed this dust we analyzed the dust via ICP-MS. And so initial findings that we can show here is, so if we look at so what we did is we grouped all the plants by biotic community. In this case, this is interior chaparral. And then we looked at, this is bar plots just comparing elemental concentrations by burn temperature or burn severity. And then the plants that were included in this burn are listed below. And what you see is that in general, this particulate matter at 10 microns or micrometers or less, these metalloid concentrations are generally increasing by temperature. And we see this same type of pattern with the Sonoran Desert scrub. And again, this is showing the plants and the elemental concentration. And I think if we look at interior chaparral, if we look at arsenic, we can see that there's an increase at the higher burn temperature, lead, as well as some other toxic elements or contaminants of concern. Here we see copper and cobalt as an example. In addition to this work, we're also ensuring that we are analyzing samples that are at 10 microns or less. And so here is an example image of determining particle size distribution by the scanning electron microscopy and the environmental mode. And so this is an image of what's called the burrowweed that was burned at 350 degrees. And we can see here, for the most part, these particles are less than 10 micrometers. So we had a lot of interesting challenges with this project, particularly around getting the dust generator built. So we're a little slightly, sorry One Health, but we're slightly behind, but we're really excited to continue to analyze the data, continue to visualize the particulate matter, specifically around looking at particle size, shape, and distribution, but also determining the metalloid concentration by aerodynamic diameter, and to understand what metalloids are prevalent at specific sizes and these health-relevant sizes that would be inhaled. And then I'm very excited to work with my colleague, Dr. Xing Ding, in the Southwest Environmental Health Sciences Center, where we're setting up to do our animal exposure model, where all of the dust that we generated is now going to be used in an animal model of exposure. So these animals will then be exposed to these dust mixtures that I previously presented. And thank you so much.